to come out and start kicking people's doors in, then something might get organized.
And that's why they've got all the Army brigades, which they admit in the John Warner Defense Authorization Act, to go after the states. But that's not going to work. That's going to unify people if they try that.
Well, sure. It's never worked anywhere. But they don't care. They'll try it because they're going to be someplace else sitting it out anyway. They're not going to be here. So, we're just going to have to wait and see what unfolds. And it could be a financial collapse. It could be devaluation of the dollar. It could be China calling in their debt.
World War III, they're trying to get the Russians in a fight.
Well, yeah, and attacks on Iran by Israel, and we got to pick sides. I mean, it could be a lot of things. And, with Obama siding with the PLO and all those Middle Eastern terrorist organizations.
Al-Qaeda, they're using Al-Qaeda.
Well, yeah, you got Hamas, you got PLO, you got all those different organizations that crop up overnight, and it's
stay there, Craig. I want to see what's happening with this next guest. I want to get your take on them openly using Al-Qaeda in Libya and Syria now, just briefly. Okay, we got the CEO from the GMO Mosquito Company joining us here in just a few minutes, but I want to get Colonel Craig Roberts of RifleWarrior.com, best-selling author, researcher, retired police officer, helicopter pilot, all that, on with us to give us his take, also Army intelligence, his take on Obama and the globalists in NATO saying that the military's under their command now, Congress going along with it, and then publicly letting Al-Qaeda have Libya, and now using them against Syria, and now putting in the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. What is the larger plan there, and how do they juxtapose, give up all your rights because Al-Qaeda is hiding under your desk, and the TSA needs to grow up your wife and daughter because Al-Qaeda might be in their pants, but Al-Qaeda is good and taking over these countries?
Well, my take on it, my flags went up when they did Egypt and ended up with the Muslim Brotherhood getting a big chunk of the say-so on what goes on in Egypt, because Egypt previously had been somewhat of an ally to us, and they weren't really a huge threat to Israel, and now they are, and they're not an ally of ours anymore. And then, of course, it went across North Africa, it hit Libya, and then you see the same groups with the same ties to the same people, basically back to Tehran, Iran, and they all have the same plan, and that basically is take over the entire planet and turn us Muslim, and try to kill off everybody that's not Muslim or fails to pay their tax and convert. So that's the issue I've got is, why did we support any of these people? We shouldn't have had anything to do with that, and except to protect on our own interest. It didn't make sense. So when you got Hamas and you've got Al-Qaeda and you've got these different splinter groups that get involved in overthrowing these governments over there that so far haven't been a threat, now they've become a threat.
So the larger strategy is what, in your view?
Well, I think the larger strategy is to put all these people under the same set of circumstances, same rules, so to speak, the same leadership, the same objectives, and so that they organize to get better. Most of the different peoples of the Middle East don't like each other, and it's hard to get them to organize to do anything. The Iranians are Persian; they're not Arabs, and the Arabs are broken down into different factions, and the Egyptians aren't really Arabs. But when they use their saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, then even if they're enemies, they would unite against us or the West or against Christianity or against Judaism. They would do that. That's the thing that pulls them together, and they are purely evil. That whole bunch is purely evil. You don't see a lot of Christians taking hostages and cutting their heads off. I mean, and so that should tell people something right there. And these are the very people that want to get this Sharia law going. They've taken over France. They've taken over Holland. They've taken over the UK. They've got their own neighborhoods and courts and everything. And now they're taking over New York City and places up in what is it, Milwaukee or not Milwaukee?
Michigan. But Colonel, my point is this. The more moderate Muslim countries are being overthrown, and the globalists are putting the Al-Qaeda jihadis in, and that's the plan. I'm saying it's an organized clash of civilizations playing us off against each other. But this really does illustrate the whole war on terror is a fraud and was designed to take our basic liberties. RifleWarrior.com. It's always great to have you. And say hi to the family for me.
We'll do it.
All right, there goes Colonel Craig Roberts. Known him about, I don't know, I've been interviewing him like 15, 16 years, but gotten to know him personally over the years. Really nice guy. Has a lot of interesting sources and just getting his take on everything. Okay, we are now joined by Hadyn Parry. He's the CEO of Oxitec. He has a background in life as a science sector, and I'm not going to go over his huge bio, but he is the head. He is the head of the company that all over the world, Australia, you name it, has developed these mosquitoes, GMO mosquitoes, of the mosquito that can carry the dengue fever. And they're wanting to release these in Florida. And a lot of people are up in arms about that. And, hey, we try to get folks on from the other perspective. And when they'll do it, they're here. So we can only say that we respect Hadyn Parry for coming on. Mr. Parry, thank you for joining us from the UK.
No, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Wow, your Skype looks like you're sitting in the room next to me. All right, so tell us about yourself, the company, what this particular genetically modified mosquito does.
Sure. Well, the company itself is a small UK company. We're about 40 people. We came out of Oxford University. What we have pioneered is a way of effectively producing sterile insects, and we focus on those species that either spread disease like dengue fever or that damage crops in terms of agriculture. So we've got two sides to what we do, both the public health side and the agriculture. The one that we're talking about here is the mosquito called Aedes aegypti, and it basically has come out of Africa. It's spread itself around the world, and when you have Aedes aegypti in an urban environment and someone comes into that environment with dengue fever, then you have the conditions with which the dengue fever will spread from person to person, because dengue fever is only spread by the bite of a mosquito. And there's no vaccine, there's no medication for dengue fever. And quite frankly, chemicals have done a poor job in reducing the incidence, because this mosquito is very difficult to kill with insecticides, because it lives in and around your home.
Now, I know in places like Australia, from the numbers, you're the expert on this, a lot of people get dengue fever, some do die. But here in the U.S., 30 cases last year, 60 the year before that? I think it's 0 so far. With the mosquitoes. Why release these in Florida?
Well, it depends on what Florida wants to do. I mean, the reason that we were consulted by the Florida Keys mosquito folk is because Florida Keys did not have dengue for years and years. You have to go back 20, 30 years. I don't even remember the last case. And then in 2009, they got about 29 cases, and those were people who had not traveled. So in other words, they got dengue locally in the Keys. So what they did is they responded by, very much increased manpower to carry out surveillance, remove breeding sources, carry out chemical treatments. They increased all of the levels of activity a huge amount. And the following year, they had about 67 cases, or there or thereabouts. So they hadn't managed to control it. Now, last year, thankfully, they had no cases at all, which is terrific. But the issue is, you need two things to come together. You need to have the mosquito already in your town, and you need then to have the virus come in. Now, the issue is, if you have the mosquito, then you have the conditions that are ready to spread the virus if it comes in. Now, last year they didn't have the virus. That's good. But because Florida Keys has, I think it's around 3 million visitors a year, and a lot of those are going to come in from places like Puerto Rico or Cuba or around the Caribbean, then, you are at risk.
What does dengue fever do to you?
It's flu-like symptoms. It's known as breakbone fever, which gives you a clue. It can be anything, actually, from asymptomatic all the way through up to hemorrhagic fever where blood vessels burst and shock syndrome and then ultimately death. But normally speaking, people would have a very severe flu, severe headaches, feel as if their bones are breaking. It's very frightening and unnerving. It's not normally fatal, but it is very unpleasant.
All right, well, you're very kind to join us here. Obviously, there's a controversy about having GMO spiders. People don't trust GMO because what we've seen from some of the big companies and the problems and the drug companies out there with all the scandals they're involved in, knowing their vaccines are causing convulsions, knowing that that the drug out there for asthma was really killing people and didn't help people. So that's why folks are concerned about this. I'm not saying there couldn't be things properly tested, GMO stuff that wouldn't be a problem, but we have a track record in the larger industry of basically being above the law. So I think that's why people are concerned. We appreciate you coming on to talk about this. Again, we have the CEO, Hadyn Parry, of Oxitec, company that produces these modified mosquitoes. Let's get into, we're about to go to break. Again, you're gracious to spend time with us in the evening over there in the UK. What are these mosquitoes? How are they changed? What do they do? How do they supposedly mitigate the dengue fever problem?
Okay, so how are they changed? What we've done is we've put a gene into these mosquitoes, and that gene causes the offspring, the next generation, to die. Now, there are two interesting facts about mosquitoes. Firstly is males don't bite you and males don't spread disease. And the second thing is that mosquitoes actually don't travel very far. So they travel about 200 yards in their life. So what we do is we have mosquitoes, we breed them, which are in effect sterile. So their offspring will not survive. We release males into the environment because males are the ones that are safe, they don't bite. They will mate with the females that are out there. And then instead of that female, which potentially could produce up to 500 live adults in her lifetime, those offspring will not occur. They will die before they reach adulthood. So effectively, it's birth control for insects is a sort of way to think about it.
Very interesting. We're going to go to break here, and I want to come back and talk about specifically what you do, how you develop this, because I guess you guys are the patent holders for this particular type of technology.
Sure, we are, yeah.
Amazing. All right, Hadyn Parry is here. All things dengue fever, mosquito eradication. We've got some news articles here we'll go over with him on the other side. And we'll also give you the website for Oxitec. It's oxitec.com if you want to go see their promo videos. Stay with us. Hadyn Parry, the CEO of Oxitec, a genetic engineering firm, I guess is the proper name for them. He can correct me if I'm wrong, has made big news. I mean, here it is in the current New Yorker magazine. It's got Obama as a doctor on the front. New York Times, just hundreds of publications. Big debate down there in Florida, and he's saying, hey, Florida wants the technology, they get it. Specifically, though, let me read to you out of New Yorker on page 44 in this current July 9th issue. It says, environmentalist